General Zexvar stood ramrod straight, his iridescent scales gleaming under the artificial lights of Nexus 7's main hangar bay. His 4 arms were clasped behind his back in what he considered the epitome of military bearing, while his anterior sensory tendrils twitched with barely contained disgust. After 300 cycles of maintaining the Galactic Military Academy's pristine standards, he was about to witness what he considered the greatest insult to its hallowed halls, the arrival of humans. Sir, his aide, Lieutenant K-Thrix, buzzed nervously beside him. The Earth transport is requesting final docking clearance. Let them dock, Zexvar replied, his voice dripping with the kind of condescension that only a Merzillian could achieve after centuries of believing themselves the galaxy's greatest warriors. Though I still maintain this diversity initiative will be the death of our proud traditions. The sleek transport ship glided through the energy barrier with far more grace than Zexvar had expected from a supposedly primitive species. He'd reviewed the briefing materials, of course. Humans, Deathworlders, bipedal, possessed of unusual endurance and a disturbing ability to survive things that should, by all rights, kill them. But reading reports was one thing. Actually allowing them into his academy? Pure political madness. The ship's boarding ramp descended with a soft hiss, and out walked sauntered the 2 human cadets. Twins, according to their files. The male, Rex Blackwood, had a shock of dark hair and a grin that somehow managed to look both friendly and predatory. His sister, Raven, moved with a calculated grace that reminded Zexvar uncomfortably of the apex predators from his homeworld. General Zexvar Rex called out, snapping into what passed for a human salute. Cadets Rex and Raven Blackwood, reporting for duty, sir. Zexvar's anterior tendrils curled in disapproval. I see the concept of proper volume control is not taught on your world, Cadet Blackwood. Oh no, Sir, Raven replied with a smile that could only be described as wickedly innocent. We're just naturally enthusiastic. You should hear us when we're actually trying to be loud. Lieutenant K-Thrix made a sound suspiciously like a suppressed laugh, quickly masked by a cough, when Zexvar shot him a glare. You will find. The general pronounced, each word precisely measured, that the Galactic Military Academy operates on principles of discipline, tradition, and proven combat methodologies developed over thousands of cycles. Your presence here is merely a political courtesy. I suggest you remember that. The twins exchanged a look that made Zexvar's scales itch. He'd seen that same look on the face of cadets right before they did something spectacularly unauthorized. Of course, sir, they replied in perfect unison, their faces now masks of absolute military propriety. Too perfect, really. Even their matching regulation black uniforms seemed to mock the Academy's standards somehow. Lieutenant K-Thrix will show you to your quarters, Zexvar said, already turning away. Training begins at first shift. Do try not to embarrass yourselves or your species too thoroughly. As he stalked away, he heard Rex whisper to his sister 10 credits says we can make him molt from stress within a week. You're on, Raven whispered back. I give it 3 days, tops. Zexvar's tendrils twitched violently. It was going to be a very long training cycle. The Academy's combat training arena buzzed with whispers as Rex and Raven entered for their first assessment. The massive circular chamber, designed to accommodate beings from over 30 different species, suddenly felt more like a circus ring with the humans as the main attraction. Look at their fragile exoskeletons, a Vespidian cadet chittered loudly. One good sting would end them. Forget stinging, rumbled a towering Centaurian from the back of the crowd. They don't even have proper defensive plates. I've seen more intimidating maintenance drones. The speaker stepped forward, his crystalline armor plates catching the light. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 muscled arms and biometallic skin, Cadet Krell Thor cut an imposing figure. He was the Academy's reigning combat champion, a fact he never let anyone forget. Welcome to real combat training, Softskin's Krell Thor announced, mandibles clicking in amusement. I do hope you've updated your medical documentation. You'll need it. Rex cracked his knuckles, a sound that made several alien cadets flinch. That's sweet of you to worry about our health, big guy. We'll try not to hurt you too badly when it's our turn. Before Krell Thor could respond, General Zexvar strode into the arena. Cadets, today's assessment will evaluate your basic combat capabilities. Though some of you, his tendrils curled meaningfully toward the twins, may find our methods somewhat advanced for your evolutionary level. Raven raised her hand with exaggerated politeness. Question, sir. Will we be allowed to use any improvised weapons, or just standard-issue equipment? This is not one of your primitive street fights, Cadet Blackwood, HFY replied. We utilize sophisticated combat protocols developed through millennia of martial tradition. So, that's a no on the improvised weapons, then Rex asked, looking disappointed. Shame. Raven does amazing things with a coffee mug. Several alien cadets laughed nervously, unsure if he was joking. The way Raven patted her regulation mug didn't help clarify matters. Enough, HFY barked. Cadet Krell Thor, as our top student, please demonstrate proper form for our new additions. Krell Thor stepped into the center ring, his biometallic skin shifting into combat configuration. With pleasure, General. Standard exhibition sequence. No, the General's mandibles curved into what passed for a smile among his species. Full combat protocol. Let's show our Deathworlder guests what real warriors can do. What followed was admittedly impressive if you enjoyed watching someone perform combat moves with all the creativity of a maintenance manual. Krell Thor executed a flawless series of strikes, blocks, and counterattacks against holographic opponents, each move perfectly matching the Academy's textbook specifications. Observe, HFY proclaimed proudly. Perfect form, precise execution, proven effectiveness. Looks more like a dance recital, Raven muttered, just loud enough to be heard. Care to demonstrate your own capabilities then? Cadet Krell Thor challenged, his armor plates bristling. Or do you prefer hiding behind words? Rex stepped forward instead. Mind if I try? Been wanting to stretch my legs after that long flight. Procedure dictates we begin with basic defensive stances, HFY started, but Rex was already moving. What happened next caused several recording devices to glitch from attempting to track his movement speed. He didn't so much step into the training ring as explode into action, treating the carefully mapped combat zone like a parkour playground. Holograms flickered and died as he hit them from impossible angles, often while in mid-flip or sliding under their guard. This is not proper combat protocols. HFY's voice had risen several octaves. Cease this unauthorized display immediately. Oh, sorry, Rex said, hanging upside down from a training drone he'd somehow managed to scale. Should I slow down? I know some species have trouble processing rapid movements. The absolute silence that followed was broken only by Raven's slow clap and drawled comment, show off. You didn't even use the ceiling fixtures this time. Krell Thor's crystalline armor had taken on a distinctly reddish hue, the Centaurian equivalent of an enraged blush. This is not combat, this is chaos. Funny, Raven replied, taking a sip from her mysterious mug. That's exactly what the last guy said. Right before Rex introduced him to the concept of gravity-assisted persuasion. Today's exercise, General HFY announced with strained patience, will demonstrate proper defensive formations against multiple attackers. Observe as Squad Epsilon performs the 7th variation of the Merzilian shield wall. The assembled alien cadets moved with precise coordination, their various appendages and defensive structures forming an impressive barrier. It was a technique that had won countless battles across the galaxy. At least, that was the case until Rex and Raven were assigned to the opposing team. Ready, Sis, Rex grinned, stretching in ways that made several arthropoid species distinctly uncomfortable. Remember the bet, Raven replied, already eyeing the environmental controls. Loser buys coffee for a month. Before HFY could signal the start of the exercise, the twins were moving. Rex sprinted straight at the shield wall, a suicidally direct approach according to every combat manual in the Academy's database. The defensive line shifted to meet him, exactly as thousands of cycles of tradition dictated. Which is why no one was prepared when Raven hit the gravity controls. This is unauthorized equipment manipulation. HFY's tendrils writhed in outrage as the training room's artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Cease immediately. Can't hear you, Sir Raven called back cheerfully, bouncing off a wall. Too busy implementing tactical advantages. The carefully arranged shield wall dissolved into chaos as cadets struggled to compensate for the shifting gravity. Rex, meanwhile, was treating the entire scenario like an elaborate gymnastics routine, using the confused defenders as springboards to reach their supposedly secure rear position. Point captured, he announced, sitting cross-legged on their objective marker. Also, I think some of our friends here might need motion sickness remedies. The Arcturian is looking a bit green. Well, greener than usual. The next exercise went even worse or better, depending on your perspective. The twins were tasked with defending a position against superior numbers. Traditional doctrine called for fortifying a single strong point. Instead, they turned the entire training zone into what they cheerfully termed a funhouse of doom. Did they just? Lieutenant K. Thrix stared in disbelief, weaponized the cleaning drones. Affirmative, a thoroughly disheveled Vespidian cadet reported, trying to remove the industrial-strength cleaning foam from his wings. And they've somehow reprogrammed the maintenance bots to play something called the Imperial March while hunting us. But the most disturbing development, from Zexvar's perspective, was the growing interest other cadets showed in these unorthodox methods. He caught a group of arachnid cadets practicing wall running during their off hours. A trio of Vespidians had started incorporating aerial acrobatics into their attack patterns. Even the stoic geologians were experimenting with what they termed dynamic terrain utilization, though their version involved more landslides than strictly necessary. This is unacceptable, Zexvar thundered during a staff meeting. They're corrupting centuries of proven methodology with their chaos. The efficiency ratings for mixed-species squads have increased by 47%, K. Thrix pointed out, reviewing his datapad. And the infirmary reports a 23% decrease in training injuries since the humans introduced their parkour fundamentals workshop. They're teaching unauthorized classes now, more like informal study groups. Yesterday's session covered something called creative application of physics in combat scenarios. The engineering faculty has requested to audit the next one. The situation reached its peak during the annual tactical simulation. Traditionally, it involved carefully planned maneuvers and set-piece battles. This year, however, where is the rest of Beta Squad? Zexvar demanded, watching the simulation screens in growing horror. According to official channels, K. Thrix consulted his notes. Still in their barracks, sir. According to actual surveillance, they're using the maintenance tunnels to flank the opposition while Rex keeps them distracted with what he calls dramatic monologuing. On the main screen, Rex was indeed engaged in an elaborate speech about the tragic nature of conflict, complete with questionable poetry and expansive gestures. The opposing force was so bewildered by this departure from protocol that they completely missed Raven's team rappelling from the ceiling. The worst part, a Centaurian instructor muttered, is that it's working. They've achieved their objectives in half the expected time, with minimal resource expenditure. They're using cleaning supplies as smoke grenades. Zexvar's scales were starting to show distinct signs of stress molting. That's not in any tactical manual ever written. Actually, K. Thrix interjected. Cadet Raven submitted a quite thorough documentation of their methods. She's titled it the Alternative Combat Manual when traditional tactics need a coffee break. It's become quite popular in the junior cadet study groups. A cheer went up from the observation deck as the simulation ended. Beta Squad had achieved the highest score in Academy history, despite or perhaps because of ignoring every standard protocol in the book. I believe, K. Thrix said carefully, watching his superior officer's tendrils tie themselves in knots. Cadet Rex called it thinking outside the box, though Cadet Raven suggested a more accurate term might be throwing the box out the airlock and using its remains for improvised cover. Zexvar made a sound that caused several nearby translator units to short out. This cannot continue. We must restore proper order, traditional discipline, structured combat protocols. At that exact moment, the twins' voices echoed over the general announcement system, which they definitely shouldn't have had access to. Attention all cadets. Impromptu advanced parkour session in Cargo Bay 3. Today's special topic: how to use artificial gravity wells for fun and tactical advantage. First 20 participants get free coffee. The sound of hundreds of cadets rushing to attend was only slightly less disturbing than the fact that 3 junior instructors were among them. The breaking point came during what was supposed to be a routine hand-to-hand combat demonstration. Krell Thor, his crystalline armor now permanently tinted with frustration, stormed into the training hall, where the twins were teaching a group of enthusiastic cadets how to optimize environmental advantages through creative interpretation of physics. Enough, his voice echoed off the walls as his biometallic skin rippled with barely contained rage. You mock our traditions, corrupt our training, and turn the academy into a circus. I challenge you both to the traditional combat tournament. 3 days from now, Full combat protocols, no improvisations, no tricks. Rex, who was hanging upside down demonstrating something he called a tactical ceiling crawl, flipped to the ground with casual grace. Sounds boring. Counteroffer we accept, but make it interesting. Both traditional and alternative combat rounds. You dare to modify the sacred tournament format. Krell Thor's mandibles clicked rapidly, the Centaurian equivalent of grinding teeth. Sacred, schmacred Raven waved dismissively, taking a sip from her ever-present mug. If your traditional methods are so superior, surely they can stand up to a little variety. Unless you're worried about something. The assembled cadets' attention ping-ponged between the twins and Krell Thor like they were watching a zero-G tennis match. Several were surreptitiously placing bets via their neural interfaces. Fine, Krell Thor snarled. 3 rounds. 1 traditional, 1 in your chaos style, and the final round combined approaches. Winner takes all. Takes all, what Rex asked innocently. When I win, you both leave the academy. Forever. And take your disrupting influence with you. The room went dead silent. Even the cleaning drones, which had somehow developed personalities since the twins started reprogramming them, stopped their usual humming. And when we win, Raven's voice had lost its usual playful edge. Impossible. But, if by some miracle you succeed, I will publicly acknowledge the validity of your methods, and submit myself to training in your alternative techniques. The twins exchanged one of their telepathic-looking glances before nodding in perfect sync. Deal. News of the challenge spread through Nexus 7 faster than a quantum transmission. Within hours, the entire station was buzzing with excitement. Betting pools emerged in every department, even among the supposedly stoic engineering staff. The Academy's normally rigid social hierarchy dissolved as cadets openly chose sides. The preparation period that followed was intense, to say the least. Krell Thor sequestered himself in the traditional training halls, drilling the ancient forms with mechanical precision. His supporters, mostly senior cadets and traditionalists, spoke in hushed tones about his mastery of the sacred combat arts. The twins, meanwhile, turned their preparation into what they called a tactical research party. Their improvised training sessions attracted an ever-growing crowd of curious cadets from all species. Today's lesson, Rex announced to a packed cargo bay, is about adapting traditional forms for maximum unexpected efficiency. Or, as we like to call it, how to make your combat instructor question their life choices. Remember, Raven added, demonstrating a move that shouldn't have been possible according to several laws of physics. The key is to be unpredictably predictable, or predictably unpredictable. Honestly, just aim for causing maximum confused screaming from your opponent. Even General Zexvar found himself drawn into the growing excitement, though he'd rather suffer permanent molt than admit it. He observed the twins' training sessions from his office, allegedly to document their violations of protocol, but increasingly finding himself taking notes. Sir Lieutenant K. Thrix reported during one such observation, "We've detected some unusual activity in the maintenance sectors. It seems several senior instructors are participating in unofficial training sessions with the humans." Treachery. Zexvar's tendrils coiled in shock. Which instructors? Well, Sir Combat Instructor Yer Thak was seen practicing something called parkour after hours. And Professor Jean Tax from Advanced Tactics has been attending what the humans call chaos theory and practice seminars. The tension reached new heights when a group of first-year cadets was caught attempting to recreate the twins' famous gravity well slingshot maneuver in the hydroponics bay. The resulting salad explosion took 3 days to clean up, but surprisingly improved the yield of several vegetable species. 2 nights before the tournament, Raven was found in the archives, studying traditional combat manuscripts with uncharacteristic intensity. When questioned, she just smiled and said something cryptic about knowing the rules before you break them properly. Meanwhile, Rex had somehow convinced a group of maintenance bots to help him construct what he termed a surprise mechanical appreciation demonstration for the tournament. The fact that he did this while simultaneously teaching a geologian how to breakdance only added to the growing legend. The night before the tournament, the Academy's usually strict curfew was quietly ignored as cadets gathered in small groups, discussing potential outcomes. The dining hall became an impromptu betting center, with odds being calculated on everything from victory conditions to how many of Zexvar's tendrils would tie themselves in knots during the event. Did you hear? A young Vespidian kid buzzed excitedly to his friends. The twins were seen practicing with actual weapons in the zero-G chamber. Traditional ones. That's nothing, a geologian rumbled back. I heard Krell Thor trying to learn human break-dancing moves when he thought no one was watching. Nearly crashed through 3 decks when he attempted something called a headspin. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Even the station's AI seemed affected, playing what it claimed were appropriate training montage soundtracks through the public address system at random intervals. In his quarters, Krell Thor methodically polished his crystalline armor, each movement precise and measured. Down in their improvised training space, the twins were having what appeared to be a serious strategic discussion while hanging upside down from the ceiling. "You sure about this, Rex?" asked his sister, passing her a fresh cup of coffee, somehow not spilling a drop despite their inverted position. "Trust me," Raven grinned, taking a sip with practiced ease. "I've figured out exactly how to turn their precious traditions into our greatest advantage. Remember that thing we did during the lunar base graduation? The one that got us banned from 3 different gravity wells and earned us a standing ovation." "Exactly. But this time with a classical twist." Their laughter echoed through the maintenance shafts, causing several cleaning drones to bob in what could only be described as anticipation. Tomorrow would either mark the end of their academy career or the beginning of a whole new era in galactic combat training. Either way, it was going to be spectacular. The academy's main arena had never been so packed. Every available viewing space was crammed with spectators, from nervous first years to seasoned instructors trying and failing to maintain dignified expressions. Several maintenance drones hovered near the ceiling, their optical sensors gleaming with what looked suspiciously like anticipation. General Zexvar stood at the announcer's podium, his tendrils twitching sporadically. The traditional combat tournament will now commence. Round 1, classical forms and techniques. No improvisations, no unauthorized maneuvers, strict adherence to. "We get it," Rex called from the competitor's area, wearing what appeared to be a perfectly regulation uniform, though something about it made the general's scales itch with suspicion. "Traditional moves only. Ready when you are, big guy." Krell Thor entered the arena with ceremonial precision, his crystalline armor gleaming. The traditional round began exactly as centuries of protocol demanded, and then immediately went sideways. Because while the twins were using only traditional moves, they were using them in ways that made several combat instructors need to lie down. Rex performed a perfectly executed Mercillian defensive stance while running up a wall. Raven's textbook Centaurian power strike somehow incorporated a backflip that sent her opponent sprawling. This is technically within regulations," Thrix whispered to his increasingly agitated superior. "They're using only authorized moves, just not in the authorized order, or direction, or gravity orientation." "That's not how those techniques are meant to be combined." Zixvar's voice had risen several octaves. "The sacred forms clearly state." "Point to the humans," the automated scoring system announced cheerfully, causing several traditionalists in the audience to choke on their ceremonial beverages. Krell Thor rose, his armor now sporting several new scratches. "The next round is yours to design, humans. Let's see how well I adapt to your chaos." The twins' grins should have triggered several safety protocols. "Round 2," Raven announced, producing her infamous coffee mug. "We call creative problem solving in variable conditions." She pressed a button on her wrist computer. The arena's environmental controls went berserk. Gravity shifted randomly between sectors. Holographic obstacles appeared and disappeared. Cleaning drones zoomed around, spraying various substances that may or may not have been standard cleaning solutions. "Begin," Rex shouted, already in motion. What followed was either the most brilliant or most horrifying display of combat innovation the Academy had ever witnessed, depending on who you asked. Krell Thor, to his credit, adapted better than anyone expected. He used his crystalline armor's natural properties to reflect the cleaning drone sprays back at their users. He even managed a decent approximation of parkour, though his landing could have used work. "Not bad," Raven called out, using a gravity fluctuation to launch herself over a holographic barrier. "But can you handle this?" The maintenance bot's Rex had been programming suddenly descended from the ceiling, carrying what appeared to be. "Is that my ceremonial desk?" Zexvar squawked. Borrowed, Rex shouted back, using the floating furniture as an impromptu platform. "We'll return it mostly intact." The round ended with Krell Thor trapped in a zero-gravity pocket, tangled in what appeared to be repurposed cleaning supplies and decorative banners from the mess hall, while the twins performed synchronized victory dances on the floating desk. The final round, HFY announced, trying to maintain some semblance of dignity, will combine both traditional and alternative approaches. His tendrils curled around the word alternative like it was personally offensive. This was where things got interesting. The twins had spent their preparation time studying not just how to break traditional combat forms, but how to remake them. They moved like water, flowing between classical stances and improvised maneuvers with impossible grace. A traditional Vespidian striking pattern merged seamlessly into a breakdancing move. Ancient Merzilian defensive formations were adapted for zero-G combat. But Krell Thor had learned too. His crystalline armor flashed as he incorporated elements of human unpredictability into his classical training. He used the environment in ways that would have made his instructors proud or horrified, depending on their perspective. The audience was mesmerized. Species rivalries were forgotten as cadets cheered for particularly spectacular moves from both sides. A group of arachnid cadets had started taking notes. Several instructors were pretending not to do the same. "This is unprecedented," Thrix exclaimed, watching as Rex performed a perfect traditional salute while dodging sideways through a maintenance hatch. The combat effectiveness ratings are off the charts. The final clash came down to a moment that would be replayed in academy training sessions for years to come. Krell Thor, executing a flawless traditional attack sequence, found himself facing the twins in perfect synchronization. They moved through a series of classical forms that seemed to flow like liquid, each motion precisely calculated to. "Wait," an instructor muttered. "Are they using the traditional forms to create a resonance pattern in his crystalline armor?" Indeed they were. The combination of traditional strikes, delivered at precise angles and frequencies, caused Krell Thor's biometallic armor to vibrate sympathetically. The effect was spectacular and slightly musical. "Did they just defeat him with physics and interpretive dance?" someone in the audience asked incredulously. "Technically," Raven replied, helping a dazed but grinning Krell Thor to his feet, "we defeated him with a proper understanding of traditional forms combined with creative application of materials science. The dance part was just for style." The arena erupted in cheers. Species barriers broke down as cadets rushed to congratulate both winners and loser. A group of maintenance bots performed what appeared to be a victory parade, complete with harmony parts to Krell Thor's still humming armor. "I believe," Rex announced, standing atop the floating desk which had somehow acquired decorative streamers, "this calls for a celebration. Who's up for learning some traditional Earth victory dances?" The resulting party would go down in Academy history as either the most impressive or most alarming display of interspecies coordination ever witnessed, depending on who you asked. Even General HFY was seen tapping his foot to the rhythm, though he would deny it under oath later. In the aftermath of the tournament, the Academy underwent changes that would have made its founders either proud or apoplectic, possibly both. The first sign came during the official ceremony where Krell Thor, true to his word, formally requested training in alternative combat methodologies. "I still maintain," he announced, his armor still occasionally humming in harmony with itself, "that traditional forms have value. But perhaps there's something to be said for making them dance a little." The real shock came during the next staff meeting, when General HFY cleared his throat, all three of them, and made an unprecedented announcement. "After careful consideration," his tendrils only slightly twisted, "I have concluded that combat, like any science, must evolve. Therefore, we will be implementing a new integrated curriculum combining traditional and innovative approaches." The twins, who definitely weren't supposed to be in that meeting, high-fived loudly from their hiding spot in the ventilation system. Additionally, HFY continued, pointedly ignoring the muffled celebration above, cadets Rex and Raven Blackwood will be appointed as special instructors for the new Adaptive Combat Innovation Program, assuming they can refrain from redesigning the entire station's infrastructure for at least 1 week. No promises, came the cheerful reply from the ceiling. 6 months later, the Galactic Military Academy had transformed. Traditional combat classes now included sections on creative application and adaptation. The maintenance bots had somehow formed a dance troupe. Even the cleaning drones had developed specialized combat protocols, though they still insisted on playing dramatic background music during training sessions. Krell Thor became an enthusiastic advocate for integrated combat styles, though his attempts at breakdancing remained a work in progress. His crystalline armor, permanently altered by the resonance pattern from the tournament, now hummed in perfect pitch whenever he executed particularly impressive moves. Perhaps most surprisingly, General ZXVR was seen participating in what the twins called extreme traditional form reinterpretation sessions. Though he still insisted it was purely for supervisory purposes, security footage of him attempting a zero-G backflip told a different story. You know what the best part is? Rex mused one day, watching a group of first-years practice traditional Mercillian forms while suspended from anti-grav harnesses. Nobody even blinks anymore when we suggest combining quantum physics with ancient combat techniques. Speak for yourself, Raven replied, sipping from her legendary mug while teaching a geologian the finer points of tactical parkour. I'm still getting complaints about the coffee-powered propulsion system we installed in the training drones. The Academy's new motto, suggested by Lieutenant K. Thrix in a moment of either inspiration or hysteria, said it all: tradition evolves, innovation preserves, chaos trains. Though some still swore they could hear General ZXVR's tendrils twitching whenever it was recited at formal events.